are ready. 15 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. In case of a draw, they'll go to 10 plus 10, handshake, and off they go. E4, E5 by Vidit. That's his main opening. He likes to be solid. Knight comes out to F3, knight to C6, and we have the Italian with bishop C4. Vidit brings his bishop out to C5. We have short castles here. And knight to F6, attacking the pawn here. D3 played by Faustino. D6 by Vidit, opening up the bishop here. C3 controlling the center. And A5, gaining space and also stopping ideas of B4. Rook to E1 played a useful move in general, freeing the square of F1 for the knight, also protecting E4 so that later you can go D4. H3 played. And Vidit brings his bishop out to E6. He's ready to take on these doubled pawns to open up his rook on F8. But Faustino says, I'm not interested. I'm going to bring my bishop back to C2 this way. Knight comes to D2. And now this very interesting and normal maneuver to bring the knight from E7 to G6. D4 played and knight to G6. Vidit has been blitzing out his moves. He's at 16 minutes, 27 seconds. Faustino has just 13 minutes on the clock. And now knight to H5. Also, look at this. The queen can attack the knight. There can be some discoveries. And that's why Faustino takes with the knight. He's attacking the knight on H5. Did Vidit miss this? Pretty sure he did not. He takes back. Queen takes H5. And now E takes D4. You win back your pawn in the center. And now the best move is knight to F3. And he plays it. So the knight now attacks the pawn in the center, but also creates the threat of knight G5 attacking E6 and H7. Takes here. He takes back. Pawn takes C3. And Vidit plays his pawn to H6. Well, slightly dubious here. Bishop can come back to C2. E5 is in the air. Bishop opens up. Knight D4 could come at some point. Queen E7 played. And now, you can jump in with the knight here. Or push E5. Faustino, is he going to put pressure on Vidit? He plays it. Knight to D4. And Vidit brings his queen to C5, is offering a trade. If you avoid it, black starts to, put pressure with rook a d8 and so on. So he takes the queen, queen takes C5, bishop takes C5. If you take on E6, this position is slightly better for black with pressure here. So that's the reason why bishop E3 is the right decision. And this position is very good for Faustino. He plays pawn to F4, gaining space. And, Vidit could very well start putting pressure on the queen side with A4. No, he goes B6, slightly weakening the C6 square. One of the main problems for black is the knight on G6. It's not doing so much. That's why Faustino goes G3, just strengthening the structure, bringing the king into F2, rook D8 played. And he is trying to put pressure in the center. This is going to be a very interesting endgame with white having this central mass of pawns. Knight to E7 played by Vidit. King F2 played. And Vidit goes bishop A3 with the idea of bishop B2, but Faustino makes a big error. He goes bishop C1. Instead of this, he could have played bishop B3 with this variation that you could win pawn, but I can go knight B5 and get it back. But after bishop C1 takes, rook takes, you can see that black's position has improved, and Vidit goes A4. Lovely move, stopping bishop B3 ideas. King to E3. And now maybe B5, pushing the pawn forward. C5 coming in next. He goes knight to F3, trying to come here. F6 may be needed. Instead, Vidit goes knight to C6. He's actually trying to get his knight from a5 to the c4 square. The c4 square is weak. 1 minute 29 seconds for Faustino, 3 minutes 9 seconds for Vidit. Knight to a5. This does seem like a position where Vidit can keep on grinding. Knight e5 now, very careful. You have to, maybe you can play f6 here with the rook already on d8, but he takes on d1. Bishop takes d1 because otherwise the a2 pawn would have been hanging if you would have taken with the rook. Now very important to play rook d8, but instead he makes a mistake, f6. Now you can take and go king d4, king c5. White would be pressing. He's going for the knight. Will Faustino go for this? And he can actually press that. No, he goes knight f3. He misses that chance to in fact fight for advantage. c5, Vidit quickly takes into control the d4 square. And now knight to d2, putting pressure here. Bishop comes back. Already black is pushing because of this majority. Bishop e2, attacking this pawn, but b4. And this is dangerous. Pawn takes pawn already. Down to 17 seconds, Faustino. It's difficult to save such a position. He's going to d4. Rook comes to c8, attacking here. And Vidit knows this is his chance. You don't get such chances in such a match. b4 under attack, pushes it forward with b3. ab, he takes with the knight, controlling d4, also threatening rook c3 check when the d2 and d4 squares are both controlled by the black knight. bd1 played to attack the knight on b3, and it's time for the rook to enter. Check, king goes back, and now a3 pushes forward. a2 is coming in. Bishop takes b3, and you can take with the rook, you can take with the bishop. Everything looks super great. He takes with the bishop now. And rook to a1. Well, the a pawn is so strong. Defended by the bishop, already on the 7th rank. 8 limits the white rook to all extent possible. And the bishop can calmly sit on f7. He goes bishop c4. Pawn to e5. Faustino trying to create his own passer, but this pawn is just too close to the black king. Rook attacks the knight. And knight f3 played. Bishop to d5, attacking the knight once again. The combo of the bishop and rook is already deadly, but add to the mix the pawn on a2 and it becomes simply unbearable. Rook c3. And Faustino, with just 1 second on the clock, pushes g3, g4, and he loses the h3 pawn. He's shaking his head. The youngster isn't happy there with what has just transpired. Gives a check with it here. And king comes up to d3, rook b2, threatening rook b1. He goes knight c2, and with it anyway goes rook b1. Now the knight is locked to the rook forever. The rook is locked in, and the bishop protects the pawn here. So white is completely tied up, and perhaps the easiest way to win this is to start bringing your final piece into the game. King f7. With it does it. This is easy for him, and he wins here. Vidit Gujrathi scores an important win, moves through to the 3rd round of the FIDE World Cup 2025. Will face Sam Shanklin in round 3, and that is an important